Hey, I'm glad you came. I was thinking about the thing we were talking about, being distracted, or rather, how to get out of that funk, those thoughts, or when you're just feeling low or high and you don't want to feel that way. But how do you like get unstuck? How do you move on? How do you let go of what you're ready to drop? So I thought, well, why don't we just talk about it a little bit? So let this be an educational conversation. So not a lecture or advice. What that means, or what it means to me, is that, well, like you're talking to a friend. You're listening so as to reflect what that person is saying, instead of giving a lecture, like telling you what to do or thinking about what you would say instead, or that time where what you just said remind me of what that just happened with me. And that's like, yeah, that's common practice until we get better at it. But I don't need to tell you, you're a good listener. So yeah, well, I was thinking about it, and when I think about it, I realize that's exactly that's exactly what you can do. Remember, we didn't have much time, but we said when you don't have time, the best thing you could do is to distract yourself. Focus on what makes you happy, and then go do that, because that's going to like link you up with the you prefer to be, and the you you're attracting. Now, I told you we'd come back to it, and that's why I'm really glad that you're here, because you can't just do that. And what I mean by that is when we just turn our attention away from the thing that makes us feel, let's just say, bad or shitty, when we think about it, then it never goes away, and it kind of, like it kind of grows in power, so that focusing on something better can get kind of desperate, certainly urgent. So because like it's still there, and clearly it still matters, but and then you just like, well, we just kind of like look at ourselves and we're like and then that grows. It's evolutionary. So let's move in that direction. I was thinking about how I was thinking, and really understanding and self-accepting, I think, is key. So when you think of like the behavior or the feeling shitty, this is hard. So this is what you do when you have a moment, or you can't get out of bed and you're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna stay here, because it's hard until it gets easier. In that, like, you just get really good at doing something that's hard. It's like a skill. So in a nutshell, if I were to say anything short but impactful, would be to try to understand how you're right to feel the way that you feel. Because until then, you're just wrong, you know? There's something wrong with you for thinking that. So first, I'd say, even if you just like remember one thing, it's you're right. You're right to yourself. and then give yourself that, so that at least when that thing comes up, you're not wrong. You're right to feel the way that you feel. But if you can move on from there, then you can make progress. And what that can look like is, well, let's talk about it. I'm right to feel that way. Well then, why doesn't it feel good? Well, it doesn't feel good because I don't want it to be that way anymore. Or I don't like that that's me, and that I'm thinking about it right and I'm an asshole, or something like that. So when you start with you're right about the way that you're thinking, this is like the first step towards just taking responsibility for the flow of your thoughts. So with enough practice, that you're right turns into, shit, I'm right about whatever I want, and then you can kind of morph, and not in like a fake way, but literally transforming that thought that used to get you down into something that, well, it goes from you're right to like, okay, I get it, towards like, okay, why was that, like, was that the best thing that could have happened, because it did happen. So what did I learn about what matters? I want to stay away from examples, and I'm going to remind you to maybe not so much get lost in your own while you're listening, but instead connect the inquiry maybe to the outline of something, and then revisit maybe an example thought with what you come to understand, with just me and you talking. So let's recap and go forward. You're right to think that the way that you feel, but the way to let go of it is basically to understand it enough that you're like, yeah, no, I do accept that. I was right to think that. I'm a good person for thinking that, because good people think the way that they feel. And I learned this thing about it so that I don't know, it sounds kind of cheesy. It's like, learn something about it. Like, just like what's your lesson? But really, if you don't like it, why not? And then what are you going to do about it not happening in the same way again, right? Like, we're not talking about going to McDonald's, for a Big Mac. We're talking about something big, something major, something worth your attention, and obviously a lesson. And there's no quick way about it. But although when understanding does arrive, your shift, your transformation can happen quickly, right? Okay, you know what? I'll use something of an example without too many details, in that I can remember something really shitty happening to me. and really I just really make something that really made me sad. And I didn't really have control over the thing because it wasn't necessarily something that I did. It was something that happened. It affected me. And the fact that it happened broke my heart. Like, really bad. And for a while, that's how I felt and how I thought. And a while can be 13 hours, a while can be a lot, but however time has to pass for you to, or for you to be familiar with the way that you feel. When it gets to the point where you're like, this again, and it's like, oh, like maybe like go deeper or rise to something different. And in this case, the long story short is what I did realize, because you can't change what you don't take responsibility for. It doesn't have to be your fault, but if you take responsibility for a thing, then you can change it. And that's a lesson I learned really early, and it was impactful, and I kind of apply it to a lot of I apply it to everything. And I was actually in a yoga class. I was taking a yoga class, and some emotions came up, and I realized that I didn't do anything then. What I did or didn't do happened a lot earlier. Like, basically, I hadn't made a choice to value myself enough. And so, because of that, distracting myself from a thought, eventually the universe, my consciousness, manifested a growing intensity of attraction, magnetization, until it reached the 0 point within me, and it was demagnetized and released as being complete. Because as I lay there in my yoga class, listening to a great song, it was like kind of calm, and I realized that I wasn't valuing myself, and by realizing I wasn't valuing myself, I came into my own value. I came into like another level of understanding in how I was deserving enough to myself, and my choices and thought patterns are owed to that, to the squashing and demagnetization of that lack mentality towards what I do believe, which was I'm awesome, So let's go over that one more time, and then I know you said you gotta go, and I'll let you do your thing. So what did we say? When things are sucky or shitty, feel them until you don't want to feel them anymore. And that's important. And when it feels really shitty, like, obviously you don't want to feel that ever, but that's not true. Like, when you feel shitty and you're still feeling shitty 5 minutes later, it's because you want to. And it's part of the process. So when you don't want to and it feels the same, like you're going in a circle, make it a spiral and take it one step further. Be like, okay, yeah, I'm right to feel that way. But what is possible for me to come to understand about the situation, so that anytime I think about it, I'm it doesn't bother me, right? Because the key to getting over and letting go of anything and everything is that it doesn't go away. It's you're changing your relationship with it. You're still, your mind's eye can still travel towards it, especially until it decays, because that's really the only way things disappear or back into the like inertial fabric of potential in our reality. It's not stopping a thought, but changing it, transforming it into something that's more harmonious with the rest of your life. And when you do that, that becomes you, and that helps all of us. So thanks. Okay, cool. I'll let you go. But this was nice. Let's do it again. Okay. Catch you later. You're awesome. Love you. All right. Peace. We'll see you soon. Well, I love you. Yeah.